Your mental health matters. Positive Mental Health Week on Tipp FM.
The organisation Living Links provides practical help, information and support to persons bereaved by suicide. Now, Michael Egan is a co-founder of the organisation. At present, he is national coordinator, and indeed locally he is chairman of the North Tipperary branch of Living Links as well. Michael, thank you indeed for talking to us.
That's all, Fran.
The genesis of Living Links, Cloughjordan in Tipperary, is that right, Michael?
It is. It's in the very north of Tipperary, probably be very well known following President Obama's visit. It's just 6 miles from Moneygall.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I suppose like every village and town and city in Ireland, it hasn't been divide of having suicide bereavement. And this is what got 6 of us together back in 2002 to see if there's something we could do to help those that were bereaved by suicide. And as a result of that, Living Links was formed there.
And in terms of what was available up until Living Links, why did you feel that something different and something more assertive was needed, I suppose, in some ways, Michael?
I suppose the big difference, or one of the differences between Living Links and other groups that are providing support was the fact that we visit the person or family in their home. And we're not professionals, it's just a listening support service that we provide. Heretofore, people had to attend groups.
Yes.
And it was from listening to people that were bereaved, they felt that they could not do basic things like go shopping, even go to mass or church. They found that extremely difficult. Having to go outside the door was a difficulty for them. And I suppose it all went back to the stigma surrounding suicide and the taboo surrounding suicide. And that made it extremely difficult, particularly for people in a rural area where everyone in the locality would know them. Everyone in the locality would be sympathetic towards them. But however, the bereaved felt that they would be, pointed out as the person that had a suicide in the family. And it was for that reason that we developed a training program for volunteers that in the event of a family or any person, makes no difference who they are, if they're affected by suicide, that we could support them in their home or other venues that would be suitable and would meet their needs.
You did find with your experience and that of the group as well that there's multiple emotions going on, particularly for that first year or over that first year, Michael.
Indeed, I suppose I could say over the first 12 to 14 months there's quite a lot of confusion. And whereas families, of course, grief, as I say, is a singular thing anyway.
Yes.
Everyone grieves differently. Everyone will be at a different stage of their grief, and this can be difficult for families as well. You could have maybe 2 or 3 ahead at a particular time, but that doesn't say that they're not going to slip back again to where they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that. And this is another difficulty for them. And I suppose there are issues as well that they would like to speak about. Maybe things that, it could be anything from information regarding the inquest or information regarding the role of the Gardaí to anything that they would like to discuss with someone other than a family member. And I suppose one of the reasons why they avoid discussing things like that is in case that they would cause further grief or cause the person to become upset.
You also speak about the dysfunction that can be within the family because of those different levels of grief. In other words, somebody seeing a person maybe as they might perceive it getting on with their life and saying, you're forgetting about the person. Is that something you come across quite a bit?
That's quite true. That has happened, and I suppose will continue to happen. And that is where a person has moved forward. And even at times where we've met people who've said that because of a situation that they were in, they were forced to laugh even though their heart was breaking at the time. But it gave the wrong signal to another family member. And maybe tend to think that the person that had died had been forgotten about by them, when in actual fact that is not the case at all. They are still grieving, but because of circumstances, they are forced into situations where they had no other choice but to, I suppose, act in a particular manner, which the other person would find, I suppose, to put it mildly, upsetting.
Yes. Are you in any doubt that the stigma of suicide is still alive and well?
It is alive. Not as bad as it was 10 or 15 years ago, but unfortunately it is alive. And it's going to take a long, long time, I think, to get rid of it. And if we look back in time where a stigma, personally where I think it came from anyway, when we look at the church and state laws, we're going back to the 6th century, back to 532 AD.
Yes.
When Christian burials and funeral rites were refused to Christians. And then in 566 AD, when Pope Augustine declared that suicide was a mortal sin. And the fact that when we look at what happened in 900, about 925, with the office of what we now call the coroner was formed, where a person's goods were seized following a death by suicide. And when we put the two together, you can see, I suppose, where the stigma came from. And I suppose along with that came superstition as well. But now we have to be fair to everyone concerned, or particularly to Pope Augustine, because it was more than likely the suicide prevention program of the 6th century AD, where they were hoping that if they put the fear of God into a person's mind, that it would prevent them from dying by suicide.
And largely there's an element of truth in that, because there seems to be a huge increase since people stopped going to churches in the same way.
Well, if I could quote the late Dr. Michael Kelleher, who I suppose he together with another psychiatrist back in 1983 made a great attempt to destigmatise suicide. In one of his later books that he wrote just prior to his death, he said that when the queues outside a confessional decreased, they increased outside his office door. Wow. And he would refer to the priest as being the poor man's counsellor. Yes. And I suppose with that, coupled with that, are other things that happened in our society as well, that we don't know our neighbours to the same extent as we did years ago.
Yeah.
And I suppose other things have happened as well, such as the introduction of television. I know it's gone back a long time now. And of course the motor car, where people really don't know one another, and they don't seem to have time to talk to one another like they did in the past. And I suppose when you put everything together, it does cause isolation to some degree or another.
So loneliness, isolation, would you put them at top of the list?
Yes, and I suppose, again, when there's a one word, I suppose, that would cover all that. It's unhappiness, and it would appear that people who die by suicide are deeply unhappy.
Yeah. And
that would be one of the things that could be seen as a cause for suicide.
Yeah.
And trying to,
Yeah, no, please go on.
And trying to get people into a state of happiness or to overcome their problems, to try and encourage them to speak about it to someone who is prepared to listen to them, and give them the opportunity to speak about whatever it is that's on their mind, and be non-judgmental, and allowing them to make decisions themselves, I think would help greatly in reducing the incidence of suicide.
When you're dealing with somebody that is suicidal, how far will you go with that? Will you go and meet the person? Will you go and stop them if necessary? How does that work, Michael?
That would depend, Fran, on what courses that person would have undertaken. There is an excellent course which is run by the HSE. It's called ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, which is a 2-day course. And that actually gives the person the skills to intervene at a particular time.
All right.
And no, it doesn't mean that the person who will not die by suicide at a later date, but at least at that particular time they have the skills to intervene and help them overcome their suicidal thoughts and tendencies at that particular time. It is a skills-based program. It's very much a hands-on, but it's very, very, very worthwhile doing. And it also gives you the confidence to approach a person and give you that is suicidal, and give you the skills to test if a person has suicidal thoughts or not. So there's a lot of things involved in that, but I think the main thing is that you have the skills to intervene in the event of a person showing suicidal tendencies.
I think people like yourself and your colleagues who work with you, I think you're great people because a lot of responsibility weighs on your shoulders when you're dealing with people like this.
Well, it does. We have to be careful in what we say and what we do.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we do in Living Links, and our main objective, is that we will be there for people as a friend.
Yes.
And we want to try and do what happens when a death occurs in a family, where neighbours and friends call in and to sit and listen to the people that are bereaved. And the only difference is that we have to be invited in. We do not invade a person's privacy. But when we are invited in, that's exactly what we do. And our training would, of course, involve other things apart from listening, that we would know something about the inquest format and other persons to contact in the event of having questions surrounding the role of the Gardaí or the inquest. I suppose that's the only difference between us and what would happen when a death occurs and family and friends call in to visit.
I'm particularly wondering where children are concerned. Are you able to help out? Trying to tell a child this or trying to get a child to understand suicide, or do you help people with that?
Well, what we do there is we tell them what we have been told. No, yes. we do not deal with people under 18 years of age.
Yes.
But we do tell them what we've been told by others, and others in this case will be people who had been bereaved by suicide when they had a young family. And one thing that they would say is to be truthful with them and to tell them in age-appropriate language what has happened. And also to be aware of the fact that children usually ask closed questions. And you just answer what they ask without elaborating on it. And we have a tendency, I suppose, to elaborate when we are asked questions. But with a child it's different. They will ask a question and they will then probably give some thought to that answer. And that could take anything from minutes to hours and come back with another question after that. But it seems that the important thing is to be truthful with them as to what has happened.
What about your own mental health and that of your colleagues? Have you a way of dealing with this? Because to deal with such tragedy on an ongoing basis, it must take its toll.
All of our branches have what we call a supervisor. Now that, I suppose, when we heard that in the beginning, we thought it would be someone who would be breathing down our necks every couple of seconds.
Yeah.
We have in North Tipperary, we have a psychotherapist, Mary Jo Meehan, who is based here in Nina, and Mary Jo is available to us on a needs basis. So if we do require help ourselves, she is there for us. But the other thing that we will do as well is that every so often, maybe twice per annum, that all of us would meet Mary Jo together for what we would call group debriefing, and which would be also considered as ongoing training for us ourselves as well. And it's by having people like Mary Jo, it's a great comfort to know that she is there, that if we do find something that is difficult for us, that we can offload there. And apart from that, every branch has what we call a coordinator, who is the person who is there, the first point of contact for those seeking support. And we would advise the people, after they make a visit, to contact a coordinator, and without breaching any confidence whatsoever, just to say that they have been out with the family and what they have experienced and how they are feeling themselves.
I'm conscious, Michael, that people listening to us today may be in a bad way. They may be experiencing thoughts of suicide or just generally depressed. What can you say to people listening, Michael? What can you say to them? I
think the most important thing is to speak to someone about that. And never to forget that our primary care, our GPs, our doctors are there to help us as well. And they are in a very good position to diagnose the particular type of depression that we probably are suffering from, and how to treat that and where to go with that. But I do think that by speaking to anyone who is prepared to listen initially is a very good support, and after that then to attend at a GP.
What about contact for Living Links, Michael? How can people contact your organisation?
Well, our national number is 087 4122052. And we have a website as well, and our email address is easy to remember. It's info@livinglinks.ie, and either through the national number or through the email, and then we can put people in contact with the appropriate volunteers that will be able to help them.
All right, Michael, thanks very much indeed for talking to us today, and continued success with Living Links, providing that practical help for people out there. Good to talk to you, Michael. Thanks
very much, Fran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your mental health matters. Positive Mental Health Week on Tipp FM.